Somewhere in Rome, about 2,000 years ago, there was a boy whose name nobody knows. The word we call him by isn't a name at all. In Greek, it simply means acquired, property, something added to a household. That is what they wrote down for him. He owned nothing, not his work, not his hours, not even the sound people used to call him across a room. And he spent the rest of his life answering the only question a person in his position could ask. What, then, is actually mine? He found an answer. Tonight you're going to hear it. Not as a lesson. There's nothing here you need to learn, or agree with, or remember in the morning. Just the quiet company of a man who had almost nothing, and worked out, very carefully, what could never be taken. I think it might be a good thing to fall asleep to, because most of what keeps us awake belongs to the pile he learned to set down. So let yourself settle now. Find the position you'll sleep in. Let the covers come up over your shoulders. Let your jaw come loose. Let your hands lie where they've fallen, and let your eyes close whenever they'd like to. You won't need them again tonight. You're here at Restful Minds, and by the end of tonight there will be nothing left that you have to hold on to. Let's begin. He was born in a town called Hierapolis, in what we now call Turkey, around the year 50. We don't know his parents. We don't know what they called him. We don't know whether they lived long enough to see what became of him. Somewhere in his childhood he was brought to Rome, and there he became the property of a man named Epictetus. Epictetus had once been owned by somebody too. Now he was rich and powerful, and secretary to the Emperor Nero, and that is where the name comes from. Epictetus. Not chosen, not given with love, simply the Greek word for something acquired, the way you'd label a piece of furniture, or a horse, or anything else that arrives at a house and stays. Sit with that for a second. Not sadly, just look at it plainly. Everything a person normally builds themselves on, a family name, a birthplace they can return to, work of their own, a body that belongs to them. He had none of it, not one. He also walked with a limp for his whole life. Nobody knows for certain why. The accounts disagree, and they were written long afterwards, and I'd rather not repeat guesses about a man's pain. So, a young man with no name of his own, no family he could name, nothing he could keep, no say in where he woke up, and a leg that hurt on stairs. That's who worked out the thing we'll be talking about tonight. Though there was one thing he owned later on, just one, a small lamp he wrote by. And one night somebody took it. What he did the next morning is, I think, his entire philosophy in a single gesture. It's also the funniest thing in his story, and the strangest, and it has a final twist that I promise is true. I'll tell you about the lamp in a little while. For now, hold on to this. He had almost nothing, and he was about to find the one thing that nobody, in all those years, had ever been able to reach. Here's the first surprise. Epictetus let him study philosophy. We don't know why. Perhaps it was fashionable. Perhaps he saw something. Whatever the reason, the boy was allowed to attend the lectures of Musonius Rufus, probably the finest Stoic teacher alive at the time, which produced a very strange arrangement. By day, a young man who belonged to somebody, whose hours weren't his, who could be sent anywhere, at any time, without being asked. By evening, in a room full of senators' sons, sitting with the deepest questions a person can ask. Now, if you'd been in that room, and you'd wanted to test whether philosophy is worth anything at all, you'd have looked at him, because everyone else in there was doing it comfortably. It's easy to say that money doesn't matter when you have some. It's easy to be calm about losing your position when nobody can take it. Fine ideas are cheap in a warm house. He didn't have a warm house. Whatever he concluded, he had to live inside that same night. And here's what I find most telling about him. In everything that survives, hundreds of pages of him talking, he hardly ever mentions any of it. No account of what was done to him, no dwelling on the leg, no asking anyone to feel anything about his early life. It comes up in passing, once or twice, the way you'd mention the weather. He simply wasn't interested in being the subject. He was interested in the question. What he concluded was this: almost nothing is ours. Not the body. It ages, it tires, it does as it pleases. Not our reputation, that gets made inside other people's heads, where we've never been. Not our belongings, those come and go. Not the events of the day, which arrive whether we agree with them or not. But there was one thing left, one small thing, and he built everything on it. What you make of it, that's yours, the judgment, the response, the way you meet the thing. Nobody had ever been able to reach that, in all the years, in all those rooms. His owner had every part of him except that. Something in him was never anybody's. I want to say clearly what this is not, because it can be told badly. This isn't be strong. It isn't nothing can hurt you if you're tough enough. That would be a lie. And it would be a cruel one to tell someone at midnight. It's much gentler than that. It's a piece of good news about where the boundary is. Because if almost nothing is yours, then almost nothing is your job. That's what he was actually pointing at. Not effort, relief. The enormous relief of finding out how small your actual responsibilities are. We're taught the opposite, mostly. That a good person carries as much as possible, that caring means holding it all at once, all the time. He didn't think so. He thought that was simply a mistake about ownership, a bit like lying awake managing somebody else's house. Care as much as you like. He did. He spent 40 years teaching people for nothing much. Just stop trying to carry the parts that were never in your hands. Think about that for a moment. Lying here, most of what tired you today wasn't yours. What someone thought of you, whether the traffic moved, whether the person on the other end of the message was in a good mood, how something turns out next month. You carried it anyway. Everybody does. We pick up whole rooms full of things that were never on our side of the line, and then we bring them to bed. Have a look at what came upstairs with you tonight. Something somebody said, and what they might have meant by it. A decision waiting on somebody else. A number that won't be known until Thursday. How a person you love is doing, in a life you can't stand inside. Every one of those is real. Not one of them is yours. You can't move any of them from here. Not tonight. Not lying down, not with a tired head at this hour. They will do exactly what they were going to do, whether you stay up with them or not. He'd have said, quite kindly, put those down. Not because you don't care, because they were never yours to hold in the first place, and holding them has only made your arms ache. And notice, he isn't asking you to solve anything. He's asking you to let go of a weight you were never given. Those are very different requests, and only one of them is possible at this hour. He was freed eventually, sometime after Nero's death. Nobody knows exactly when or how. He taught in Rome for a while. Then an emperor decided philosophers were inconvenient and expelled them all from Italy. So he moved across the sea to a town called Nicopolis, on the Greek coast, and opened a school there. He taught in that school for roughly 40 years, until he was an old man, and by the notes we have, He wasn't solemn about it at all. He asked a lot of questions. He teased his students. He used ordinary things to explain himself. Jugs, traveling, sandals, dinner parties, people being annoying at the baths. Nothing lofty. If you'd wandered in expecting a wise man with a beard saying wise things, you'd have found a quick, funny old teacher who kept asking what you were actually going to do about it. He never wrote a word of it down, not one. Everything we have came from a student who sat there taking notes and later thought they were worth keeping. There's something fitting in that, for a man who kept pointing out that owning things is mostly an idea we have. He didn't own his own words either. He said them out loud in a room and let them go, and they lasted anyway. 2,000 years from a man who kept nothing, not a house, not a book, not even a name. And here we are, on a dark evening, still listening. That's what we'll be doing tonight, sitting in that room for a while. You don't have to keep any of it either. Something in you was never anybody's. The little book his student put together opens with one sentence. No introduction, no warming up, just straight into it. The way you'd say something to someone who needs to hear it before they leave the house. Some things are up to us, some things are not. That's it. That's the whole beginning. Then he does something quite unusual for a philosopher. He makes a list. Up to you, what you make of things, what you go towards, what you turn away from, what you decide to do next. Not up to you, your body, your belongings, what people think of you, your position in the world. Then, in case anyone's still hopeful, he adds the rest. Everything else, everything that isn't the small handful above. Now, the first time you hear that list, it doesn't feel like comfort. It feels like being told how little you have. Your health isn't yours. Your name isn't yours. Whether you keep your job, whether the person answers, whether the thing goes well, none of it in your hands. Stay with it a second, though. The feeling turns over. He isn't taking anything from you. He's telling you where the edge is. Nobody had ever told him a comfortable version of it, so he didn't offer one either. He'd watched people lose everything on the second list, in a household where it happened often. But notice what he does not say. He never says those things don't matter. He never says stop loving what you might lose. He only says know which ones answer to you. Because a person who knows that can rest, and a person who doesn't will spend their life trying to lift things that aren't attached to anything. And the edge is much closer than we behave as though it is. Here's what I mean. Try it now, with whatever came to bed with you. Take the thing you keep turning over, hold it up, and ask one plain question. Is this in the first pile, or the second? Not is it important, not does it deserve my attention. Just, can I move it from here tonight? Almost every time, the honest answer is no. Try a few. It goes quickly once you get the feel of it. Whether they meant it that way. Second pile, what you say to them tomorrow. First pile, whether they take it well. Second, how gently you speak when you say it. First, you see the shape of it. The first pile is nearly always something small and immediate. The second is nearly always something large and elsewhere. Whether they meant it that way, what the letter says, whether the appointment goes well, whether they'll be all right, whether the money holds, what somebody decided about you in a room you weren't in. Second pile, all of it. And notice, as you say that nothing changes for the worse. The thing doesn't get worse for being named accurately. It just stops being your job for a few hours. Here's the thing about the second pile. It doesn't have a handle. You can spend the whole night reaching for it, and there's simply nothing to take hold of. That's not because you aren't trying enough. It's because the thing has no place on it where a person could take hold. So the effort goes nowhere. It just tires you. The way pushing a wall tires you. He had a good way of putting this. If you go after what isn't yours, he said, you'll wear yourself out and still not have it. Attend only to what's actually yours, though, and nobody can stop you, and nothing has to go your way first. That second half is the part people miss. Nothing has to go your way first. You don't have to wait for the news. You don't have to wait for them to apologize, or for the number to come in, or for the situation to resolve. The bit that's actually yours is available right now, in this bed, in the dark, unfinished though everything is. Which brings us to tonight. Because look how small the first pile is at this hour. Almost nothing is up to you. But the almost nothing that's left is exactly the right size for a person lying down. You can choose how you lie. You can choose to stop reaching. You can choose to let your jaw go, and your hands open, and your breathing get slower. You can choose to be kind to yourself about the day, instead of going over it again. That's the whole list tonight. It's a short one, and every item on it is something you can actually do lying down. Notice how different that feels from the list you usually go to bed with. The usual one is enormous and mostly impossible. This one has 4 things on it, and you're already doing 3. Everything else is out there, being handled by the world, exactly as it would have been if you'd stayed up all night supervising. Now, a word about the mixing up, because that's really where the tiredness comes from. We don't usually keep the 2 piles apart. We take something from the second pile and treat it as though it were in the first. We say things like, I need to make sure they understand. I have to fix this. I can't let it go until I know. And the mind, which is very obedient, sets about a task that has no handle, all night, if you let it. It isn't being difficult. It heard an instruction, and it's carrying it out, faithfully, the way it always has. It just wasn't told the thing was impossible, so tell it now, kindly. That one isn't ours. You can stop. It's a bit like trying to steer a boat by pushing at the water. The water isn't the wrong thing to push, exactly. It's just that pushing isn't the way anything happens there. You get wet, you get tired, and the boat goes where the current was always taking it. The rudder is small. It's much smaller than the river, and it's the only part you were ever holding. That's not a sad thought once it settles. A rudder is enough. People have crossed oceans with one. You don't need to be bigger than the current. You only need to know which piece of wood is attached to you. So let's put things back where they belong, just for tonight. Whatever you're carrying, put it in the pile it actually belongs in. Say it plainly to yourself. That one isn't mine. Not that doesn't matter to me. Not I don't care about that anymore. Simply, it isn't in my hands, so it isn't tonight's business. Feel what that does to your chest as you set each one down. There's something that comes loose in there when you stop holding what can't be held. A kind of quiet arriving from underneath. Do it slowly, one thing at a time. There's no rush and no order. And be gentle about it. Nobody is checking whether you can let go properly. Some of them will come back in 10 minutes, and that's completely normal. You just sort them again, as many times as it takes, until the sorting becomes easier than the holding, which it does. Usually somewhere around the 3rd or 4th time, on a night like this. He built 40 years of teaching on that one sorting, and he tested it in a life where nearly everything was in the second pile. Almost nothing was up to him. He still called himself free. You have far more than he did. And tonight, you need even less of it. Everything on your second pile will still be there in the morning, doing whatever it was going to do. You'll meet it then, awake, with a rested head, which is the only version of you that could do anything about it anyway. For now, there's a warm bed, a dark room, and a very short list. One pile is yours. Tonight, even that can rest. Further down in the little book there's another line, and it's the one I've had to learn most often. Don't ask for things to happen the way you want them to. Let them happen the way they happen, and your life will go easily. Now, I want to deal with the obvious objection straight away, because if we skip it, the rest won't land. That sounds like giving up. It sounds like being told to want whatever you get, to smile at things that aren't good, to stop minding. That isn't what he meant, and he'd have been the first to say so. He spent 40 years telling people to act, to speak up, to do their part properly, to be decent when it wasn't easy. He was not a man who let things slide. The distinction is simple, and it rests on the difference between two things we tend to blur. Accepting something is not approving of it. You can accept that it's raining and still take a coat. You can accept that someone was unkind and still not invite them again. Accepting is just the moment where you stop disputing the facts and start dealing with the actual situation. Everything useful you've ever done began there. Nobody has ever fixed anything while still insisting it hadn't happened. There's one more word doing the work here. Already. He isn't talking about the future. He's talking about what has already occurred, the thing that's finished, the part of today that is now, permanently, the way it went. You can work on tomorrow all you like, but this, the conversation that already happened, the answer that already came, the hour that has already gone, this is closed, and a closed thing can be met, or it can be argued with, and only one of those is possible. Here's the ordinary version of it. Something happens in the afternoon, say 4 minutes of somebody being difficult. 4 minutes, that's all it actually took. Then the evening arrives, and you go over it, and in the going over you keep saying a particular word to yourself, usually without noticing. Shouldn't. It shouldn't have gone that way. They shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have let it happen. Every time that word comes round, you live those 4 minutes again. By midnight you've lived them 30 times. The other person lived them once, at 4 in the afternoon, and then went and had their dinner. That's the whole thing he's pointing at, not the event, the shouldn't. And notice where the shouldn't lives, not out in the world. There's no shouldn't anywhere in the afternoon, just some words and a tone and a person walking off. The shouldn't is made here, at home, in the evening, by you, which is uncomfortable for about 5 seconds, and then becomes the best news in this whole movement, because if you're the one making it, you're also the one who can stop. It's such a small word for something that takes so much out of a person. Here's what makes it worth putting down. It isn't even true. Whatever happened, happened, which means, in the plainest sense, that it could happen. The world allowed it. Asking it to have been otherwise is asking a finished thing to be unfinished, which is the one request nobody has ever been granted. There's a picture that helps me here. You know when a door opens outward and you keep pulling at it. You're pulling harder each time, entirely convinced, and the door is behaving perfectly correctly. It isn't a stubborn door. It was only ever going to move one way. The tiredness in your arms isn't coming from the door. It's coming from the pulling. Then you stop and push instead, and it opens, and you feel slightly silly, and you go through. That's what tonight is. Not solving anything, just stopping the pulling. And to be clear, none of this cancels tomorrow. If there's something to say, you'll say it. If there's something to put right, you'll put it right. Acceptance tonight doesn't sign anything away. It just stops you spending the dark hours on a thing that can't move until morning. In fact, you'll do it better. People who've stopped disputing the facts tend to act more cleanly than people who are still objecting to the facts. Let's do it with whatever you've got. Take the thing you've been going over, and instead of the usual sentence, try this one. It happened. That's all. Not it's fine. Not I forgive it. Not it doesn't matter. Just the plain fact, said without argument. That happened today. Say it, and notice what stops. You may have to say it a few times. The mind will return to shouldn't almost immediately. That is completely normal, just an old habit with quick reflexes. Each time it does, bring it back to the plain version. It happened. 2 words, no argument in them anywhere. There's a small unclenching somewhere when you stop asking a fact to be different. It's usually in the jaw, or the chest, or the place between the shoulders. Nothing about the situation changed. You simply stopped holding it in a position it was never going to hold. Have a look at where you were holding it while you're here. Arguing with a finished thing always shows up somewhere physical. A jaw set slightly forward, one shoulder higher than the other. A hand that's been half closed for an hour without being asked to. That's the body doing its part of the pulling. It doesn't know the door opens outward either. Let it in on the news. Let the jaw come back. Let the shoulder come down. Now, and this is the part I'd like you to keep, the same thing applies to tonight itself, because there's a good chance some part of you is quietly arguing with this night, too. I should be asleep by now. It shouldn't be taking this long. I'll be tired tomorrow, and it shouldn't be like this. Same word. Same pulling on the same door. So let this be the night it is. If it's a night where sleep comes quickly, lovely. If it's a night where you lie warm and awake for a while, and then drift off around 3, that is also a night. It's not the wrong one. There is no wrong one. The night doesn't owe you a particular shape. It never agreed to anything. It's just a stretch of dark hours, going by at its own pace, the way they always have. Some of them you slept straight through, some you didn't. All of them ended in a morning. And here's the thing that people who've tried this always report, and it's almost funny. The moment you genuinely stop requiring the night to go a certain way, it usually goes that way. Not because it's a trick, because the requiring was the only thing keeping you up. He knew this in a much larger form. He had a life almost nobody would have chosen, and he wasn't pretending it was good. He simply refused to spend it asking to have been given a different one. That refusal was where all his freedom came from. Not from getting what he wanted, from stopping the demand. Think how unreachable that made him. There was nothing left to take, because he'd stopped requiring anything to be otherwise. You don't need it at that scale. You only need it for one night, about one day, in one warm bed. So set the demand down for tonight. You can pick it up in the morning if you want it. It'll be on the table where you left it. Nobody is asking you to become a person who never minds anything. Just for these few hours, stop asking the day to have been a different day. Not forever. Just for these few hours, in this dark room, where nothing can be changed anyway, and nothing needs to be. Let today have gone the way it went. Let this night be whatever kind of night it turns out to be. Feel how much lighter the body gets when it stops holding out for a particular kind of night. Let tonight be the night it is. That's all it ever needed to be. Now the lamp. I said I'd tell you, and it's time. By this point in his life, he's an old man in Nicopolis, on the Greek coast, and he's been teaching in the same school for years. People come from Italy to hear him. Some of them are extremely rich. He is not. We know roughly what he lived with, because people who visited found it worth remarking on. A bed, a rush mat, that's about it. When he'd lived in Rome, he apparently didn't bother locking his door, which people found funny, and which makes a certain sense when you consider there was nothing behind it anyone would want. You can picture the evenings well enough. A plain room, the sea somewhere below the town, students gone home for the day, and an old man who walks with a limp settling down where it's quiet. But he did have one good thing, an iron lamp, the kind you'd light in the evening and write by, or read by, or talk by. Iron was worth something. It would have been the most valuable object in the house by a wide margin, and, being a lamp, the one he used every single night of his life. Then one night, somebody came in and took it. Now, let's stop there for a second, because this is the interesting part. Think about what happens in a person when they discover something's gone. You know the exact sequence. First, you don't believe it. You look again in the same place, twice, as though it might come back. Then a small drop somewhere in the stomach. Then the search widens. Then it stops being about the object at all. It isn't really about the object. It's the feeling of having been walked in on. The someone was in here, the going over of it. How and when, and whether it was somebody you know. Then the small speeches you make in your head to a person who isn't there. That's the ordinary way. That's most of us, and there's nothing wrong with any of it. Here's what he did instead. And this is where I always laugh a bit. He thought about the arithmetic, not his, the other person's. He worked out what the exchange had actually been. Somebody had walked out with a lamp. In order to get it, they'd had to become a person who does that. So they now had a lamp, and they no longer had the ability to think of themselves as someone who doesn't take things. He decided that was a poor trade. And, having decided that, he seems to have found the whole thing rather more interesting than upsetting. Then there's the second bit, and this one's even better. He reportedly said that he'd been surprised, and that he shouldn't have been. Because what did he expect? An iron lamp, a house with an open door, a town full of people, some of whom had less than he did. The surprise, he thought, was his own error, not the world's, which is a very unusual thing to conclude at dawn, standing in a room where your lamp used to be. Then he did the thing that I think is the whole of his philosophy in one small gesture. He replaced it with a lamp made of clay. That's it. That's what he did. He went and got the cheapest possible version of the same object, and put it where the iron one had been, and carried on with his evening, because you can only lose what you have. Read that again slowly, because it's doing more than it looks. It isn't a sad little shrug about owning nothing. It's a piece of practical engineering. He noticed exactly where the tiredness had come from, not from the missing lamp, but from the fact that he'd let something breakable hold a piece of his evening. So he removed the breakable part and kept the evening. Sit with how quiet that move is. There's no lecture in it, no vow, no standing in the doorway declaring that from now on he needs nothing. He just quietly stopped owning something that could be taken from him again. And I want to be careful here, because this could sound like indifference, and it isn't. He didn't stop wanting light. He still read, he still wrote by that lamp, and taught, and lived a full life in that little house. Clay gives exactly the same light as iron. That's rather the point. He only stopped putting his piece inside an object that somebody else could carry off. That's a different thing entirely from not caring. He kept the light. He let go of needing one particular object to stay where he'd left it. Now the twist. This is the part I promised you, and I'm delighted it's true. After he died, that clay lamp, the cheap one, the deliberate one, the one he chose precisely because it was worth nothing, was bought by an admirer for an enormous amount of money. Somebody paid a fortune for a piece of pottery because it had belonged to a man who owned nothing on purpose. I find that perfect and slightly ridiculous, and I suspect he'd have found it funny too. Because think what happened there. He spent his whole life explaining that value isn't in things, and then somebody proved him right in the most backwards way possible by handing over a small fortune for a lump of fired mud. The clay hadn't changed. The lamp was exactly as ordinary as the day he bought it. All that had happened was that people had started wanting it. The one object he made worthless became the most valuable thing he ever owned, and he wasn't there to see it, which is somehow exactly right. So, what does any of that do for you, lying here? Something went today. Something always does. Not a lamp, probably. Time, patience, a plan that had to change, an hour to somebody else's mood, maybe something bigger and quieter that you haven't told anyone about. And here's the part he'd want you to notice. The thing itself went once. Whatever it was, it left this afternoon and it's already gone. The going over of it, though, that's still happening. It's happening right now, in a warm bed, hours later, in the dark. That's the second loss, and it's the one you can do something about. He couldn't get the lamp back. Nobody could. But he refused, absolutely, to also give up his evening over it. So let today's small losses be single losses. Whatever went, let it be gone. Once. Not once at 4 in the afternoon, and then again at 11, and again at 1, and again at 3:30. You've already had the loss. There's no reason to give up the night as well. He would have said it gently, by the way. Not as a lesson. He'd have said it the way you'd point out that someone's still carrying their shopping in the hallway. Oh, you can put that down. It's all right. You're home. There's a reason I love this particular story for a channel like this one. Every night, a small light on a table while somebody sits in the dark. That's the whole picture of him. And it's more or less what's happening in your room right now. He proved something about that light. It was never the iron. It was never the clay. Take either one away, and the light comes back the next evening anyway, because the light was never the thing that could be carried off. And notice, the light is still here. Whatever you actually needed today, you mostly still have. A warm room, a bed, a body that's carried you through it. The light was never in the lamp. Let the lamp go. Keep the night. He asked his students a question that sounds simple until you sit with it. What are you, actually? Not what you do. Not what do people call you. What is the thing sitting there when you take away everything that could be described on a list? And he answered it himself in his blunt way. You are not flesh. You are not hair. You are the thing that chooses. Let's slow that down, because there's something practical inside it. Notice how we talk about ourselves. My body, my name, my work, my house, my reputation. Every one of those has a little word in front of it, and we say it so often we stop hearing it. But that word is doing something. It's separating two things, the thing being owned and whoever is doing the owning. You don't say I body, you say my body. You'd never confuse a coat with the person wearing it, and yet the language is exactly the same. My coat, my hands, my past. Some of those are closer to you than others, obviously, but every single one of them is on the outside of whatever is doing the saying, which means, quietly, without ever deciding it, you've always known there's a you and there's the things attached to you. They're not the same. They never were. He pushed that further than anyone had. Take away the body. It's on loan. It changes constantly. It will do things you don't authorize. Take away the work. That's an arrangement with other people, and arrangements end. Take away the name, which was given to you by somebody else. Take away what people think, which happens entirely in rooms you're not in. What's still there? Something small and very steady, the part that meets things, the part deciding, right now, whether to keep listening. That's the one he said was actually you, and it's the only thing on the list that nobody ever managed to take from him, not in the years when everything else about his life belonged to somebody else. Think how much he had to test that with. If a person is their circumstances, then he was nothing worth mentioning. No standing, no property, no freedom, no family name. On any list of the time, he'd have appeared as a line item in somebody's household. He simply refused the whole frame. He said in effect, that's an inventory of my situation, not a description of me. And it worked. It's why senators' sons traveled across the sea to sit on the floor of a small room in Greece and take notes from him. Now, why does this matter at midnight? Because at midnight we do the opposite. We become the day's summary. You know how it goes. Something didn't go well, and by 11 o'clock it isn't an event anymore. It's a description of you. It stops being that didn't go well and becomes I'm someone who, and once a sentence starts like that, it can run all night, because there's no end to it. You can't finish an argument about what you fundamentally are. There's nothing to measure it by. No one can settle it. So the mind just keeps going round all night on a question that has no bottom. He'd have stopped you at the word am, because look at what actually happened. You did a thing, or you didn't do a thing. That's an event. It happened at a time, in a place, and then it stopped happening. Turning it into a permanent quality of yourself is a much bigger claim than the evidence allows. And notice that we only do it in one direction. Nobody lies awake at 2 in the morning thinking, I made someone laugh today, therefore I am fundamentally delightful. The mind doesn't build identities out of the good afternoons, only the difficult ones, which should tell you something about how reliable the process is. It isn't a truth being handed down. It's a tired mind at the end of a long day, doing something it isn't any good at, with no one around to say so. You wouldn't accept a summary of your whole character from someone who was worn out, sitting in the dark, and only looking at one afternoon. But that's precisely who's writing it at this hour. So let's take a few things back off the list tonight. You are not your job. It's something you do for a certain number of hours, and it would carry on without you. And it's been done by other people before. You are not how tired you look. That's a face, and it's been through a long day, and it'll be different by Thursday. You are not what you have or don't have. Those came from somewhere, and they'll go somewhere. You are not the message you sent that you're still going over. That took 4 seconds to write, and then the world moved on to the next minute. You're not even what you're feeling right now. Feelings move through a room the way weather does. They arrive, they fill the place up completely. Then they leave, and the room is exactly as it was. What's left after all that? Something with no story attached to it at all. It doesn't have a job title. It doesn't have a reputation. It doesn't get older. It's been present at every single thing that's ever happened to you, quietly, without comment, from behind your eyes, and it has come through all of it unmarked. You could think of it as the part that has been listening to me for the last while, not your history, not your circumstances, just the plain, quiet fact of somebody being there. That's what he thought a person was. Not a story, not a set of facts about a life, something more like a window that everything has passed in front of, and the glass is the same glass it always was. You can check it if you like. Think of yourself at some ordinary moment years ago, not the big events, just standing somewhere, doing nothing much. Everything about that person has changed. The face, the address, the worries, the plans, most of the opinions, and yet there's an unmistakable sense that it was you in there, looking out, the same one who is here now, in the dark, listening. Nothing has ever got at that. It's the one thing the years leave alone. That's what he thought a person was. And here's the gentlest part. That thing doesn't need anything from you tonight. It isn't waiting to be improved. It isn't keeping a record of how the day went. It's just here, the way it's always been here, entirely at peace, whatever kind of Tuesday it was, so you can set the descriptions down. All of them. The good ones as well. You don't have to be impressive tonight either. Capable, reliable, the one who copes. Those are heavy in their own way, and nobody is asking for them at this hour. No adjectives are required in a dark room. There's just a person in a bed, breathing, with the day behind them. That's enough. That was always enough. Feel how much lighter it is to be nobody in particular for a few hours. No one to be, nothing to keep up, not even a name required, and he'd have appreciated that better than anyone. Just the quiet fact of being here, in the dark, which is all any of us ever really was underneath the descriptions. Nothing you could lose was ever you. He liked the theatre as a way of explaining things, and his students would have known exactly what he meant. There was a theatre in their town. Most of them had sat in one. Nicopolis was a well-made Roman town, and it had the things such towns were supposed to have. Somewhere to see plays was one of them. So when he reached for this image, it wasn't decoration. His students had sat on those stone seats in the afternoon sun, listening to someone in a mask deliver lines written for them years before. So he put it like this. You're an actor in a play. Somebody else decides what the play is and which part you have in it. Your only business is to play the part you've been given and to play it well. Choosing the part belongs to someone else. That's the whole of it, in about 30 words. He wasn't a man who used more than he needed. Now, I want to stop right here, because that sentence is very easy to mishear, and it deserves a proper answer. It can sound like, know your place. Accept the hand you were dealt. Don't ask for more. And coming from most people, that's exactly what it would mean. It's the sort of thing comfortable people tend to say to uncomfortable people. But look at who's saying it. A man who had been owned by another household, who had no say in where he lived, or what he did with his hours, or whether he stayed in the country he was in. Nobody ever handed him a smaller life and asked him to be graceful about it. He was born inside one. He is not telling you to be content with less. He's telling you where the door is, in a room where he personally checked every single wall. Here's what he actually means. There are things about your life you did not choose and could not have chosen. The century you were born into, the family, the body, the country. Most of what has happened to you, if you're honest, whether the person you loved stayed, whether the work held, whether the plans you made at 20 had anything at all to do with what turned up. That's the script. It arrives written. Nobody consulted you about any of it. You turned up somewhere in the middle of a story that was already going, with people already in it, in a body you'd had no part in designing. Everyone is in that position. The ones who look like they arranged their own lives simply got a script with better weather in it. Then there's the other thing, which is how you meet it. The way you speak to people while it's happening. What you do on an ordinary Tuesday inside the circumstances you've got, that part is entirely, completely yours. Nobody has ever taken it from anybody. So the sentence isn't settle for it. The sentence is, the choosing was never on your side of the table, but the playing always was, and the playing is not a small thing. Think how true that is in an ordinary way. Give two people the same afternoon, same delay, same difficult phone call, same tired body at the end of it, and they'll produce two completely different days out of the identical material. One of them will be kind to the person at the desk, one won't. One will notice the light on the way home. One will spend the whole walk rehearsing a speech nobody will ever hear. One will ask their partner how the day went. One will already be talking. Nothing in their circumstances differed. Everything in their evening did. And a year later, if you asked them about that period of their lives, they'd describe two different worlds. Not because one of them got luckier, because of the 1,000 small things each of them did with material that arrived identical. That's the part he's pointing at. It's much bigger than it sounds, because it's the only part that's actually happening to you, from the inside. There's another line of his I've always liked, and it goes with this one. He says it doesn't matter whether the part is long or short. A short part played well is a fine thing. Nobody in the audience thinks less of a play because one of the characters had 4 lines. We forget that constantly. We assume a good life has to be a large one, visible, impressive, with a lot of scenes in it. He didn't think so. He'd have said a person quietly doing a small thing decently is doing the whole job. That's the entire assignment. There isn't a larger one hidden behind it, which takes a certain pressure off if you let it. Most of what any of us do is unremarkable and unrecorded. Getting somebody to school, being patient on a long afternoon, doing the ordinary work of a Tuesday without becoming unpleasant about it. He thought that was the actual thing, not the warm-up for the actual thing. Now let's bring it to this evening, because there's real relief here. You didn't choose today. Not really. You didn't choose how you'd be feeling when you woke up. You didn't choose who'd need something from you, or what mood they'd be in, or which of the things you'd planned would survive contact with the actual day. You were handed the material at 7 in the morning and asked to make an afternoon out of it, and you did. Whatever it looked like, you did. You got through it. Somebody was spoken to kindly, probably. Something got finished, or moved along, or at least survived until tomorrow. You were there for the whole thing, from the first hour to this one. That's not nothing. That's the entire part, played. That's the whole job, and it's done now. Because here's the thing about a play. It has an end. The scene finishes, everyone goes home, and nobody carries the character around all night. That's where we go wrong, I think. We come off stage and keep going, still being the reliable one, the capable one, the one who's coping, at 11 o'clock in the dark, with no one else in the room. You can stop. Notice how strange it is that we don't. There's no one left to keep it up for. The room is dark and empty, and the day has been over for hours. The character just carries on running by itself, out of habit, in an empty theatre. There's no scene running now. No one is being spoken to. There's nothing to hold together. Whatever part you play in other people's days, the parent, the manager, the friend who's fine, the one who knows what to do, none of it is required for the next 8 hours. You're not on. The theatre's empty. The lights are off, so let the face come down first. That's where most of the part is kept. The arrangement we make for other people without noticing. Let it go soft. Let the mouth stop being ready to say something. Let the eyebrows stop doing their small, polite work. Whoever you are, underneath all that, is perfectly welcome here. And tomorrow you'll pick it all up again, because that's what people do, and mostly it's a good thing. There are people who need the part you play. That isn't a burden. It's most of what a life is made of, and you'd miss it if it went, but not tonight. Tonight there is nothing to be good at. Nothing to hold steady. No one who needs you to sound all right. The whole apparatus can go quiet for a few hours, and it will all still be waiting when you want it back. Feel what it's like to lie here with no role at all, nothing to be good at, not even sleeping properly. Just a warm body in a dark room, entirely off duty from everybody, including yourself. He never got much of that. Someone always wanted something from him, first as somebody's property, then as a teacher with a room full of students who travelled a long way to hear him. Even in the small house with the clay lamp, there was always another lesson in the morning. You have it every single night. You didn't choose the part. Tonight you don't even have to play it. Let me take you to the room, because I think it's worth seeing. Nicopolis, a Roman town on the Greek coast, built 100 years earlier to mark something that had happened at sea, which nobody there remembered clearly anymore. It sat on the water, which meant ships, which meant that a young man from a good family in Italy could get there in a few days if his parents thought it was worth the journey. They did think so, which is the odd part, because what waited at the other end wasn't a grand academy. It was a house. Picture the arrival. You're 19, perhaps 20. You've had a decent education already, and you've been sent abroad to be finished off properly by a famous teacher. You've been travelling for days. You come up from the harbour, you find the address, and you go in expecting, what? Marble, probably. Something impressive. What you find is a plain room with not much in it. A mat, a bed along one wall, a lamp, which, depending on which year you arrived, is either iron or clay. An old man who walks with a limp and who does not get up. He looks at you, and what he asks, more or less immediately, is what you're here for. Not politely either. He was famous for it. He'd ask a young man straight out whether he'd come to learn something or to be able to say he'd studied with Epictetus. You can imagine how that lands after a 4-day journey. But there's no unkindness in it. That comes through everywhere in the notes. He simply didn't see the point of politeness that wastes a person's year. And yet almost nobody left. That's the thing about the accounts. Young men crossed the sea, found a plain room and a very direct old teacher, and stayed for years. Then the lessons begin, and they're not what you were expecting either. He doesn't hand you a system to memorize. He asks questions. He interrupts. He picks up whatever is nearby. A jug, somebody's sandal, a story about a dinner party that didn't go well, or a disagreement at the public baths, and he uses it to take apart something you were quite certain of on the way in. You'd have sat on the floor with the others, 10 of you, maybe 15, winter light coming in low, somebody's cough, the sea somewhere below, doing what it always does, and an old man talking, without notes, for an hour or two, entirely at ease. He teases. There's a lot of that in the notes. A dry, patient, slightly amused voice, gently pointing out that a man who says he's above caring what people think has just spent 10 minutes describing what someone said about him. He keeps coming back to the same demand in different forms. Fine, you understand it. Now what will you actually do on Thursday? That's what he cared about. Not whether you could explain the ideas beautifully, whether they showed up in your afternoon. He had no patience at all for people who could discuss the great virtues impressively, and then go home and be petty about something. That, to him, was the whole difficulty with philosophy as it was usually taught. People carrying a beautiful set of tools they never took out of the bag. Say less, he'd tell them. Do more. And when somebody asks how you're getting on with all this, don't explain it. Let them notice. He did this for about 40 years, in that room, in that town, on that coast. Winter after winter, young men arriving, being taken apart, going home changed or not changed. An old man on a mat with a lamp, saying things out loud. Here we come to the part I actually wanted to tell you. He never wrote any of it down. Not one line. Not a book. Not a summary. Not a set of notes for his students. Nothing. He seems to have genuinely not minded. The talking was the thing. It happened in a room, between people, and then it was over, the way conversations are over. He'd spent his life explaining that you can't keep anything. It would have been strange to make an exception for his own sentences, which means everything we have, everything I've been telling you all night, every idea in this whole video, exists for one reason only. A young man in that room decided to write it down. His name was Arian. He was clever, well-connected, and he would later become a serious historian and hold real office in the empire. But at this point he's just a student, sitting on the floor, taking notes. Nobody asked him to. That's the part I keep turning over. It wasn't an assignment. There was no plan to publish anything. He simply thought the way this man talked was worth having in writing, so he wrote it as closely as he could. He says as much himself. He was trying to keep the actual words, rather than tidying them up into proper prose. That's why the text still sounds like a person. You can hear the pauses in it, the jokes, the moments where he gives up on someone for a minute and then comes back to them. It reads like a recording, which is more or less what it is. A young man's attempt to keep an old man's voice because he suspected it wouldn't come again. 8 books of it, in the end. 4 have survived the 2,000 years since, and a short version, a handbook, the little book we've been drawing on all night, put together so someone could carry the essentials around. Now here's the quiet, tender thing about all of that. Epictetus almost certainly never knew. There's no sign he read them, no sign anyone made a fuss. He probably went on teaching and got older, and eventually stopped in a small house with a clay lamp and a mat, believing entirely reasonably that everything he'd said had gone the way spoken words go. He was mistaken by about 2,000 years. I find that a very restful thought, and here's why. Because it means the value of what he did was never in his hands at all. He didn't secure it. He didn't build it. He couldn't have. He had no idea it was happening. He just did the thing in front of him. Well, for 40 years, in an unremarkable room. Then somebody wrote it down. Then somebody copied it out by hand, and somebody else copied that, through centuries in which most writing simply disappeared. Then somebody translated it. Then somebody printed it. Then a great many ordinary people kept a small book on a shelf and passed it on. It arrived here, tonight, in a dark bedroom, in a country he'd never heard of, to somebody trying to get some sleep. Not one person in that whole chain was thinking of you, and here it is anyway. So let this be tonight's version. You don't have to secure anything before you sleep. You don't have to make today count, or wring the meaning out of it, or work out where any of it is going. Most of what a life amounts to is assembled quietly, by other people, out of things you did without noticing. The things you do that matter most are rarely the ones you're aware of. You have almost certainly said something this year that somebody is still carrying. You won't be told about it. That's all right. It works anyway. So you can stop trying to hold the day together in your head. Nothing about today needs your supervision now, and the parts of it that mattered have already gone off into other people's lives without asking you. Let them go. They're being carried. Nothing needs writing down tonight. Let it all go by. Of all the Stoics, he's the least interested in being impressive. Seneca wrote beautifully. Marcus Aurelius thought in long, searching paragraphs. Epictetus mostly wants to know what you're going to practice this week. He talks like a trainer, not a philosopher. Less consider the nature of things, and more try this on Tuesday and tell me how it went. And what he asks people to do is always smaller than you'd expect. Here's the sort of thing. Somebody spills a little oil in the kitchen. A small amount of wine goes missing. Nothing that matters, the kind of household nuisance that produces a sigh and a short speech. He says, "There, that's your practice, right there, on the oil. Not on the great difficulties of your life, on the oil. Not on the thing you've been carrying for 2 years. On a small mess in a kitchen, on a Tuesday, that nobody will remember by the weekend." At first that seems almost silly. Then you see what he's doing, and it's rather clever, because you cannot practice calm on the big thing. When something genuinely serious arrives, you don't get time to decide how to meet it. There's no time. You do whatever you already do, whatever your hands and your voice have learnt to do over the past 20 years, automatically, before you've decided anything. So the meeting is decided long in advance, not in the moment, in all the small moments before it. That's why he sends people to the oil, and he'd know. He learned all of this in a household where nothing large was ever up to him. He couldn't practice on his circumstances. He had none. So he practiced on whatever the day put in front of him, at whatever size it came. That turns out to be the only place anyone has ever practiced anything, because 2 years of quietly not making a speech about spilled things produces one kind of person, and 2 years of rehearsing a little speech over every small one produces another. By the time something real arrives, they are not the same person at all. Same event, different arrival. You've seen this in people. Somebody gets difficult news, and there's a kind of steadiness in how they take it. Not coldness, just a person who stays themselves through the first sentence. That didn't appear when the news did. It was assembled over years, in kitchens, over spilled things, when nobody was looking. He was quite specific about how habits work too, and it's worth hearing. Every time you do a thing, he said, you make it easier to do again. That's true of the good ones and the tiresome ones equally. Lose your patience today, and you haven't just lost your patience today. You've made tomorrow's version slightly more available, which sounds discouraging for about a second, until you turn it around, and it's worth saying plainly, none of this is aimed at anybody. He's describing how a person is built, the way you'd describe how a path gets worn across a field. Nobody decides to make the path. It appears because feet keep going the same way, because it works the other way with exactly the same force. Skip it once, and the pull is a little weaker next time. Skip it again, and it's weaker still. Not gone. He never promised gone. Just weaker. And a slightly weaker habit, repeated, becomes a habit that doesn't run your evening. That's the entire method. There's no more to it. It's such a relief once you believe it, because the small version is always available. Not answering the message tonight, letting the driver in. Not saying the second sentence, the one that would have settled the matter in your favor. Putting the cup in the sink instead of leaving it as evidence. None of those change anything on their own. All of them, quietly repeated, change what kind of evening you have. No transformation, no becoming a different person, just a series of small, unimpressive, entirely doable acts. In ordinary circumstances, on ordinary days, mostly when nobody is around to see them. That's what a steady person is made of when you take one apart. Not one great decision, a few thousand small ones, none of which felt like much at the time. I think that's why he's still read, honestly. Because everything else asks you to be new. He only ever asks you to be slightly different this afternoon. Now let's bring that here, because there's something in it for you tonight. There's a particular kind of tiredness that comes from being asked to overhaul everything. You know the feeling. It usually arrives late in the evening, and it says something like, right, from tomorrow I'm going to change how I sleep, and how I eat, and how I answer messages, and how I deal with my mother. And underneath that ambition, always, is a quiet unkindness about the person you've been so far. Notice what it's really doing. It isn't a plan. Plans have times and steps in them. That's a way of not being at peace with the person lying in the bed right now. He'd have had no time for it, not because wanting better is a mistake, but because it's the wrong size. Nothing that large has ever been carried out by anybody, and certainly not starting at 11 at night. So here's the smaller version, and it's the only thing being asked of you, one thing. Tonight, let your jaw come loose. That's it. That's the whole assignment. Do you feel how manageable that is? Nothing in it asks you to be different from how you already are. It doesn't require any resolve. It doesn't require you to be a different sort of person. It takes about a second, and you can do it right now, and it's already done. Then, if you like, one more. Let the shoulders come down. Still small, still doable, still nothing to do with fixing your life. And then, if you feel like it, one more. Let the hands open a little where they're resting. Notice there's no order to any of this, and no correct number. You're not working through a routine. You're just doing one small easy thing, and then possibly another. 3 small releases would have satisfied him completely. That's how the whole of it works. His method and this night, both. Not one enormous act of will, but a small thing, and then the next small thing. And eventually you find you've arrived somewhere without ever having made a great effort to get there. You don't have to sort out your sleep tonight. You don't have to solve the tiredness, or become someone who rests properly, or undo whatever pattern you've been in for months. Those are all second-pile items anyway, if you think about it. They're not available from here, lying down, at this hour. Tonight you just have to lie here, in a warm bed, and let one muscle go at a time. That is genuinely all. And it's enough, because it's what everything else is made of anyway. Every deep night's sleep anyone has ever had was assembled exactly like this. One thing letting go, then another, until there was nothing left holding on. He built a whole philosophy out of small things done repeatedly, in a plain room, by a man who owned almost nothing. You only need one of them, right now, where you are. And if you fall asleep before you get to the second, that's the best possible outcome. That's the whole thing succeeding. Nothing here is being marked, nothing is being counted. There's a warm bed, a dark room, and one small, easy thing at a time, for as long as you're still here for it. Small is enough. It always was. There's an objection that people raise about all of this, and it's a fair one. I want to answer it properly before the night goes any further. It goes like this. If nothing is really yours, if you're meant to hold everything loosely and expect to give it all back, then isn't this just a very elegant way of not caring about anything? Isn't it a philosophy for people who'd rather not open themselves to loving anyone? Plenty of people have read him that way. You still meet them. A certain kind of person quotes the Stoics as a permission slip for being unreachable and calls the coolness wisdom. You can usually spot it because it always sounds like a shut door and never like peace. So let me tell you what he actually did with his own life at the end of it. Picture him old, properly old by the standards of the time. He's been teaching for decades in the same town. The famous students have come and gone and become important men somewhere else. He's still in the small house, a mat, a lamp, not much else, and the limp he's had all his life. He never married. He'd urged other people to. He thought a life with a family in it was a full one, and said so, though he seems to have been teased about it because he'd not done it himself. So, an old man, alone, in a plain house, at the far end of a long life spent explaining that you can't keep things. And then something happens that nobody would have predicted. A friend of his has a child he can't manage to raise. The details are thin, the way they always are with him. What we're told is simple enough. The child had nowhere to go. Epictetus, the man who owned one clay lamp on purpose, who taught for 40 years that you should hold everything with an open hand, took the child in. He was too old to do it alone, so he brought a woman into the house to help, and between them they raised the boy. That's how it ended. Not on a mat, in noble solitude, having successfully needed nothing. In a house with a child in it, and a helper, and all the ordinary noise that comes with both. Try to see it for a second, because I think it's one of the loveliest pictures in ancient philosophy. A small house on the Greek coast, a clay lamp on the table, the cheap one, the deliberate one, an old man who moves slowly, with that limp, in a room he never bothered locking, and somewhere in that room, a baby. All the noise that comes with a baby, the waking at night, the washing, the being needed constantly at that age by someone who can't thank you. He chose that at the end. Having spent his life saying that nothing is really ours, sit with it a moment, because it changes everything he said. It means he was never talking about not caring. You don't take in a baby at the end of your life if your philosophy is about staying safely uninvolved. That is the single most attaching thing a person can do. And he did it as an old man, after 40 years of teaching exactly what he taught. Notice where this sits in the story. It's near the end. It's one of the last things anyone recorded about him. After the school, after the students, after all the years of lessons, the final image we have of the man who owned nothing is of somebody looking after a child who wasn't his. So what was he actually saying then? Something much more subtle and much kinder. He wasn't saying don't love. He was saying don't build your peace on the requirement that it stays. Those sound similar. They're completely different. The first one closes you. The second one lets you open all the way up, precisely because you're not depending on the outcome. It's the difference between a hand around something and a hand underneath it. Same hand, same care, completely different night's sleep. Think about how much of loving something is actually the demand attached to it, the unspoken condition. This has to keep working. They have to stay well. This can't be taken from me. That demand doesn't make the love bigger. It makes it tighter. It puts a kind of unease underneath it. You can feel it in the chest, especially at night. He simply removed the demand and kept the love, and you can feel the difference between the two in your own body if you look. Think of somebody you love. Just hold them in mind for a second, nothing more. That warmth on its own is easy. It has no weight in it at all. Now notice what happens when the mind adds the sentence, and nothing must happen to them. Feel how the whole thing tightens the moment that arrives. The first part was love. The second part was the demand. They're not the same, and only one of them keeps you awake. Which meant that near the end of his life he could pick up a child who needed a home and give him everything without any promise from anywhere that it would go well. That's not detachment. That's about the bravest thing a person can do. Anyone can be careful with their heart. Anyone can decide, quietly, after enough disappointments, to keep a bit of distance and call it maturity. What he did was the other thing. He let go of every guarantee and then loved anyway, with nothing underwriting it at all. Now here's why I've saved this for tonight. Because there are people out in the dark that you love, and you cannot control a single thing about them. That's just true. It's the plain fact underneath a great many sleepless nights. Whether they're all right, whether the difficult stretch they're in comes to an end, whether somebody is being kind to them today in a life you can't stand inside. Holding on tighter does not make them safer. It never has. Not once, for anybody, in the whole history of people lying awake about the people they love. The night has no effect on them at all. It only has an effect on you and on what you'll have left tomorrow to give them. It only means that you're awake at 2 in the morning, which helps nobody at all, least of all them. So do what he did. Keep the love exactly as it is, every bit of it. Nobody is asking you to want it less. Just set down the part that's a demand, the sleepless insisting that it all has to turn out one particular way. That piece isn't love. It's the thing that's been holding your shoulders up all evening. The love will still be there in the morning. It doesn't need you to stay awake to prove it. Notice where you've been keeping it while we've been talking. It's usually the chest, or the stomach, or a hand that's been half closed since the evening. Let that open. Not the love that stays exactly where it is, just the holding on part, which was never doing anything for anyone. Whoever you're carrying tonight is carried whether you sleep or not. An old man with a limp in a house with a clay lamp, holding somebody else's child. That's what a stoic looked like. Not untouchable, just willing to be reached right to the end. You can love them and still sleep. Do you remember what came first on his list of things that aren't ours? Not money, not reputation, the body. That's a surprising place to begin, until you look at what your body actually did today without asking you. It beat your heart about 100,000 times, at whatever speed each moment required, adjusting constantly, never once checking in with you about it. It took the food you gave it this afternoon and quietly turned it into a body. You have no idea how, Nobody does, really. Not from the inside. It has been quietly putting something right somewhere, all day, without mentioning it to you once. It kept you at almost exactly the same temperature all day, in changing weather, without a single instruction from you. It grew your hair a little. It knew when you were thirsty before you did. It made you yawn at 4 o'clock, and you never wondered who decided that. You didn't do any of that. You couldn't have. If it had been up to you, you'd have forgotten the heartbeat somewhere around 11 in the morning, in a meeting. So when he says the body isn't yours, he isn't taking it away from you. He's pointing out something you can feel tonight as pure relief. The most important things happening in you have never needed your attention. Imagine if they had. Imagine having to remember the heartbeat, having to decide personally how warm to stay, having to keep track of it all night, and never being able to stop. Nobody could live like that. And nobody has to, which is worth noticing on a night when part of you feels like everything depends on you staying awake for it, which means there's very little left for you to hold. And the few things you have been holding, you can hand back now, one at a time. Let's do that. Start with the jaw. That's yours to release, one of the few. Let the back teeth come apart. Let the tongue rest low and heavy. Let the whole lower half of your face stop being ready to speak. Nobody needs anything from that face until morning. It can be nothing at all. It can be completely blank, and no one will ever see it. Now the eyes. They've been open and busy since morning. Let them be still under the lids. Nothing to look at, nothing to follow. And the small muscles all around them, the ones that hold an expression together, let those go completely. Notice how heavy the lids have become while we've been talking. Heavier than the rest of your face. That weight arrives on its own, near the end, and it's one of the last things the body does before it takes over. Now the space between your eyebrows. That small area stays busy all day, and it's almost never off duty. That's where the thinking is kept. Let it go smooth, and feel the whole forehead widen slightly as it does. Now the shoulders. Feel how far they've come up during the day. Let them go down, away from your ears. Then a little further. Then let them spread and settle into the bed and stay there. That's a big one. Most people carry the whole day there. Feel the difference between where they were a minute ago and where they are now. That distance was tiredness you were producing yourself, without meaning to, since about 9 this morning. Down the arms now. Upper arms heavy, elbows heavy, forearms giving in. Let the hands open a little, palms soft, fingers uncurled, nothing to hold on to anywhere. Now the chest. Let it be loose around the breath. You don't have to breathe carefully. The body has been doing that beautifully since before you could speak. Give the breathing back to whoever's been running it. It knows the pace. It has taken every breath you've ever taken, millions of them, in the right order, at the right depth, including all the ones you slept through. Take one slow breath here, and let it out longer than you took it in. Feel how everything you've already released settles down another layer while you do. There's no hurry through any of this. Now the belly. Let it out completely, all the way. Most of us hold it in without ever deciding to. Let it rise and fall as much as it likes. Now the back, the whole length of it along the bed. Let each part hand its weight over to the mattress. Nothing needs holding up. The hips sinking, the legs heavy and warm, the feet falling open in whatever direction they'd like, ankles loose, toes doing nothing whatsoever. There. Now everything is where it belongs, nothing left in your hands. Have one more slow look through if you'd like, not to change anything, just to visit. The jaw, the shoulders, the hands, those three are where nearly everything gets kept, and they're often the last to believe the day is over. If one of them has come back up, let it go again. It'll take a few goes. That's completely normal, and it costs you nothing to do it once more. And notice what's still going on without you, while you lie here doing nothing whatsoever. This is the arrangement, and it's a generous one. You do the small, easy part. Everything complicated is handled elsewhere, silently, by something older than thinking. The heart, keeping its own time. The lungs, filling and emptying. The warmth, holding steady all through you. 1,000 quiet things, none of which have ever asked your opinion. You're being looked after tonight by something that doesn't need you awake for it. That's a good thought to sink into. Every night of your life it has taken over completely, slowed everything down, sorted through the day while you weren't there, brought you back in the morning, ready for another day, without being asked. You've never once had to supervise it. You wouldn't know where to start. So you can let go entirely. Not a little, entirely. There is no part of tonight that requires you conscious. Not one. The whole arrangement runs better without your involvement, and always has. That's not a small comfort. It's permission from your own body, given every night, whether you take it or not. The parts you were holding are handed over. The parts you were never holding are being looked after beautifully, exactly as they always are, whether you notice it or not. Give it back. It knows what to do with it. He gave beginners a piece of advice that sounds almost impossible at first. For now, he said, stop wanting things altogether. Not forever, just while you're learning. Set the whole business of wanting aside for a while, and see what happens. It's an odd instruction, and he knew it. He didn't mean become a person who never wants anything. He meant something more like this. You've been leaning your whole weight on wanting for years, and it hasn't held you up once. Try standing without it for a while, and see what that's like. There's something underneath that which is worth having tonight. Wanting always contains a small promise, tucked inside it where you can't see it. Get this, and you'll be all right. That's the sentence underneath almost every want. Sometimes it's true for about 10 minutes. Han thundered das, tuffen evdebuthas. Onces worthams, beworm chinch other complums morns. Henyofen avnor. Then the promise moves quietly on to the next thing, and you follow it, the way you have all your life. That's what makes it so tiring. Every want is a little lean forward, into a moment that hasn't arrived yet, holding a quiet condition. Things will be better once, and you've been doing it all day without ever noticing. Think of how much wanting there was in an ordinary Tuesday. You wanted the morning to go smoothly. You wanted them to reply. You wanted the meeting to end. You wanted a hot drink and then a different one. You wanted the traffic to move. You wanted to be further along than you are. And underneath those, the larger ones that never switch off. Wanting to be doing better. Wanting someone to be all right. Wanting a stretch of time where nothing needs handling. None of it is unreasonable. That's exactly the point. They're small and constant and perfectly sensible. Like a low hum you stop hearing after a while. But it's a hum you can feel once you look for it. A very slight leaning towards whatever is next. Notice whether you're still doing it now, lying here, wanting the room to be a bit cooler, wanting the thought to stop, wanting tomorrow to go a certain way, wanting most of all to be asleep already. That's the leaning. It's still on. And notice how reasonable every one of those sounds. Of course you'd like to be asleep. Of course you'd like the thought to quieten down. Nobody's saying you shouldn't. Only that the wanting itself is the last piece of the day still running, and it's the one keeping the rest of you awake to run it. So here's tonight's version of what he told his students. For the next few hours, there is nothing to get. Not a thing. Nothing is coming that you have to be ready for. Nothing will be handed out. There is no version of this hour that's better than the one you're in. You are lying in a warm bed in a dark room, and that's the whole event. Nothing better is scheduled. Nothing is being withheld from you. There's no improved version of this hour waiting somewhere else while you lie still. Let yourself stop leaning. Feel what that's actually like in the body, because it's genuinely physical. Wanting tips you very slightly forward. It's in the shoulders, mostly, and somewhere behind the eyes. A sort of readiness. Not wanting lets you settle back. Let the weight go back into the mattress. Let the chest stop reaching. Let the whole front of you soften upwards, towards the dark ceiling. Nothing to lean towards. Nothing to be ready for. There. That's what nothing to get feels like. It's a small physical change and a large mental one. The body stops being a thing on its way somewhere and becomes a thing that has arrived. Most people only get this feeling on the second day of a holiday, when the mind finally stops packing, and then only for an afternoon. You can have it now, in your own bed, without going anywhere, because nothing is actually required of you between here and morning. And here's the part that surprises people. The moment you stop wanting something else, what's here quietly becomes enough. Not because it improved. Nothing changed at all. The bed is the same bed. The room is the same room. But when there's no better version being held up beside it, this one turns out to be perfectly good. Warm, quiet, dark, entirely sufficient for a person who isn't reaching for anything. Have a look around the room from where you are, not with your eyes, just in your mind. There's nothing absent from this room. Nothing needs to arrive before this becomes a good place to be. That's rarer in a life than people realize, and it's happening right now. He'd say that's not a trick. That's just what things are like when you stop holding them beside something imaginary. So let the wanting rest with everything else. You don't have to want sleep. It isn't a thing you can bring closer by leaning towards it. In fact, leaning is the one thing that holds it off. You don't have to want tomorrow to go well. Tomorrow isn't here, and wanting has never once reached that far. You don't have to want anything at all for the next few hours. It's the one stretch of your day where that's genuinely allowed. And if a want turns up anyway, for the room to be different, for the mind to settle faster, just notice it and let it stand there unattended. It'll wander off on its own if nobody looks after it. That's how wants behave when nobody answers them. They come to the door, find the house quiet, and go on somewhere else. Just lie here, with nothing on the way, and nothing needed, and nothing being waited for. No next thing, no improvement pending, nobody about to bring you something. Only this hour, exactly as it is, which turns out to be enough, the moment nothing else is being held up beside it. Want nothing tonight. Everything you need is already in the bed with you. He talked about freedom more than any other subject, which might seem like an odd preoccupation for a man in his position, or the most natural thing in the world, depending on how you look at it. But his definition wasn't the one we usually use. We tend to mean freedom as doing what you like, going where you want, having the options. He thought that was a poor version and easy to disprove. Plenty of people with every option available are worn out by Tuesday. Plenty of people with money and time are pushed around all day by things they can't have. And there's a version of the opposite that everybody recognizes, a person who can go anywhere and spends the whole holiday checking on something at home. The room was open. They weren't. His version was quieter. You're free, he said, when you're no longer being pulled about by wanting what isn't yours to have. That's all. Nothing to do with circumstances, nothing to do with how much room you've got, which means it's available in small places, in a plain house, in a life somebody else is directing, and in a dark bedroom at 11:30, in a body that's tired. He'd have known how that sounds coming from anyone else. From a man who'd had every choice made for him, it lands differently. He wasn't describing a consolation. He'd tried the small version of a life and found something in it that the people with villas didn't have, and they came across the sea to ask him about it, which tells you who was actually free. So let's do something with that, because I think it's more concrete than it sounds. Have a look at what you're actually free from tonight. You're free from being needed. Nobody is going to ask you for anything until morning. Whatever anyone wants from you, they want it tomorrow. You're free from deciding. Every decision available to you has been postponed by the simple fact that it's dark and everyone's asleep. Even the ones that feel pressing, they can't be acted on from a bed at this hour, which means they've been taken out of your hands until it's light again. You're free from answering. Nothing has to be replied to. No message, no question, no expression on somebody's face. You're free from being seen. There is no version of you being presented to anybody right now. No one is forming an impression. That one is bigger than it sounds. A great deal of the day's tiredness comes from being visible, arranging a face, choosing a tone, being slightly on show even among people who love you. You're free from having an opinion about the news, about the situation, about how anyone is handling anything. The world will go on being complicated without your assessment of it. You're free from time. Nothing has to be finished by any particular hour between now and morning. You're free from being interesting, or capable, or good company, and you're free from getting it right. There is nothing in this room that can be done well or otherwise. Lying in a bed has no standard attached to it. You're free from being the one who knows what to do. Whatever needs someone sensible, it will need them tomorrow. Sit with that list for a second. That is a great deal of freedom, considerably more than most of your waking hours contain. Think about when else in the week you get all of those at once, not at work, not at home in the evening, with things still going on, not even really on a day off, when there's usually somewhere to be by 3. Only here, only now, every night, quietly, and mostly unclaimed. And here's the part that would have interested him. Nobody granted it to you. There was no permission. Anna meine mission. Tamenheitatham tendrodem. Kunbolitul de po. Puestelminowens mum. It simply arrives with the dark, every single night, for everybody. And most of us spend it going over the afternoon. Notice what it feels like to actually take it. There's a kind of relaxing that only happens when a person is genuinely off duty, not resting between things, not pausing before the next bit, properly, entirely finished, with nothing waiting on the other side of it. Let that reach the places that don't usually get it, the jaw, which has been ready to speak since morning, the shoulders, which have been holding something up, the stomach, which tightens whenever something needs handling. Nothing needs handling, not for hours. Let each of those places hear it separately, because they don't all get the message at once. The jaw first, then the shoulders, coming down, then the stomach, softening, letting the breath move it however it likes. They've been on since morning. It takes them a minute to believe the day is over. He'd have said that's what he meant all along. Not a life without limits. Nobody has ever had one of those. Just the absence of being pushed around, for a while, by anything at all. He found it in a small house with almost nothing in it. No door worth locking. One lamp, a mat on the floor, and he was, by every account we have, entirely content there for about 40 years. You've got it in a warm bed, in a locked house, with the whole night ahead of you and no requirement of any kind. That's not a small thing. He'd have said it was the whole thing. And you don't have to do anything to keep it. Nobody had to give it to you, and nothing can take it back before morning. It's simply what a dark room and a closed door and a sleeping household add up to. Lie in the middle of it. That's the only instruction there's ever been. You are free in this room tonight. Rest inside it. There was a line he was fond of quoting from an old hymn, and he liked it enough to put it near the end of the handbook. It runs roughly like this: "Lead me, and I'll follow without dragging my heels." Then he adds the part that makes it his, because if I don't follow willingly, he says, I'll be pulled along anyway. The only thing I get to choose is whether I'm difficult about it. That's a very practical observation, and it applies to tonight quite exactly. This night is going to pass. That part is settled. The hours will go by. The dark will do what it does, and morning will arrive on schedule whether or not you approve of how any of it went. You can go along with that, or you can be pulled through it. Those are the options, and they arrive at the same place at 7 in the morning. The only difference is what the hours in between feel like, and going along is simply more comfortable. That's the whole argument. He wasn't making a grand point about how the world works. He was pointing out that leaning back on something that's moving anyway is simply a more tiring way to travel. So let's go along with it, properly, and one thing at a time. Not by pretending everything is settled. He never asked anyone to pretend, just by putting things where they belong for the next few hours, which is not in your hands. Here's a small ritual for it, and it works better said than thought. There's a reason for that. A thought can stay half-formed and go round for hours. A sentence has to finish. The moment you put words on the thing, it stops being a cloud and becomes an item, and items can be set down. It doesn't have to be out loud, just properly worded, as though you were telling somebody. Take the first thing that's still with you. Whatever the mind keeps returning to, name it plainly, in a few words. The conversation on Thursday, the thing I have to reply to, whether they're managing. Then say, silently, not mine tonight. And picture handing it over, not throwing it away, handing it, to the night, to the dark, to whatever you like. Somebody else is holding it until the morning. Now the next one, because there's usually more than one, and they queue up politely at this hour, waiting to be dealt with. They've been waiting all day, actually. You were busy, so they stood aside. Now the room is quiet, and they've all come forward at once, which is why the mind feels so full at 11, and so empty at 3 in the afternoon. Name it. Not mine tonight. Hand it over. Keep going until the queue thins out. There's no rush between them. Give each one a moment. This is the last piece of the day, and it's the only part of it that was designed for putting things down. The thing at work. Not mine tonight. The unanswered message. not mine tonight. The decision you keep almost making, not mine tonight. The thing you said that you'd say differently now, not mine tonight. Tomorrow, in its entirety, with everything in it, not mine tonight. The person you can't help from here, not mine tonight. And that one takes the longest, and you may have to hand it over more than once. That's all right. Hand it over as many times as it comes back. And if some part of you resists, if it feels like putting something down means you've stopped caring about it, notice that thought and let it go too. Nothing is being abandoned here. The night is a few hours long. Everything you love will still be exactly as loved in the morning, and you'll be better company for it. Notice, as you go, that something loosens with each one. It's usually in the chest, or across the shoulders, or somewhere behind the eyes. A small easing every time you put one down. That's not imagination. That's how much energy it takes to hold something all evening without ever moving it an inch. And notice, too, what the night does with them. Nothing. It doesn't solve them. It won't settle anything, or answer the message, or change how somebody else is doing. It just holds them, patiently, until the light comes back. That's all a night can do, and it turns out to be exactly what's needed. Not a solution. Somewhere to put things down. Think of it as a table by the door. Everything goes on the table. It's all still there in the morning, in the same order, and you'll pick up whichever ones are actually yours, because they weren't going to be solved tonight anyway. They were only ever going to be carried. The single question was by whom, and for how long, and at what point you got to lie down, so let something else carry them. He'd have called this following willingly, not giving up, going along, not pretending anything is fine, just stopping the part where you insist on being awake for something that doesn't need you. Take a slow breath here, and feel how much lighter the whole arrangement is with fewer things in it. Look around inside and see if there's anything left, and expect a few of them back. That's what they do. You set one down, and 10 minutes later it's standing beside the bed again, looking hopeful. Don't take that as a sign the ritual didn't take. It only means the habit is older than tonight. Just hand it over again, without any commentary. No impatience with yourself. No starting over. Same words, same table, as many times as it likes. Sooner or later it stops coming back, because nothing is happening when it arrives. If there is, name it, and hand it over too. There's no limit. The night will take everything you've got. Then let your hands go soft where they're lying. That's not just an image, by the way. Most people's hands are half closed when they're holding something in their mind, and they don't notice until they're asked. Let the fingers uncurl. Let the palms open. There's nothing in them. And when your hands are finally empty, just lie there and let yourself be carried, the way the hours are going to carry you anyway. Give the night what you were holding. It's awake anyway. One thought runs underneath everything he taught, and it's the last one I want to give you before the night gets properly deep. You were never put in charge of the whole thing, only your small part of it. The rest has its own arrangements. They were in place long before you arrived. They'll carry on quite happily after you stop paying attention tonight. That sounds obvious, said plainly. It's much less obvious at 11 o'clock, when some part of you is behaving as though the whole arrangement needs you conscious. So let me tell you what's actually happening out there while you lie here. It's oddly comforting, and it's all going on right now, a few streets away and a few thousand miles away at the same time. Somebody is awake right now, keeping something going. There's a person in a bakery somewhere with their hands in dough. Bread has to exist by 6 in the morning. That doesn't happen on its own. There are people driving through the dark on quiet roads, moving things from one part of the country to another, so the shelves are full when the shops open. Somebody is sitting up in a small room somewhere, minding something that has to run all night. A harbour, a water supply, a signal box. Somebody is up with a baby, walking slowly around a dark kitchen, doing the oldest thing there is. Somebody is at a window in another country, where it's the middle of the afternoon, doing something entirely ordinary and not thinking about the night at all. Half the world is always in daylight. That's easy to forget from inside a dark bedroom, but it's true right now, at this exact moment, while you lie here. Somebody is unlocking a door for the people who start early. Somebody is sweeping a floor in an empty building. Somebody is sitting quietly with a person who wanted company. None of them know about you. All of them are holding a piece of the world together while you lie here in the dark, doing nothing at all. In a few hours it'll change over. They'll go to bed. Other people will get up. The whole thing will keep running the way it has every day of your life, entirely without your supervision. That's what he meant. There's a great deal being handled, and almost none of it is yours. It's been like this for as long as you've been sleeping. Every night you've ever slept. The world was being run by other people while you weren't there. Thousands of nights. It has always been there in the morning, every single time, without exception. That's quite a record. You can probably trust it for one more evening. And you knew this once, without being told. When you were very small, you could sleep completely. Fall asleep in the back of a car, in the middle of a room, with people talking. No checking, no half listening for anything. That wasn't because the world was any gentler then. It was because somebody else was awake, and some part of you knew it, and that was enough to let go entirely. Somebody usually was, not always the same person, and not always in the way anyone would have chosen, but at some point, for some stretch of it, somebody was up while you slept, keeping the ordinary things going. Tonight it's the bakers and the drivers and the person minding the harbour. Same arrangement. You still don't have to be the one awake. Now, the part that's actually yours. You did it today, not perfectly, probably. Nobody does. But you turned up for your part of the world and gave it the hours it needed, which is the whole of what was being asked. Whatever your piece is, the people you look after, the thing that has your name on it, you did your part of it today. It's finished. That corner of the world got its hours from you, and it got them from somebody who was tired by the end. Here's the thing worth hearing. It'll be waiting for you tomorrow, and you'll do it again. But tomorrow's version of you will be rested, and clearer, and considerably better at all of it than the one lying here at this hour. So the most useful thing you can do for everything you're responsible for is exactly what you're doing now. Lying still, handing over, letting the night have it. That isn't a compromise. It's the thing itself, done properly. Nobody has ever looked after anything well on no sleep, and everybody has tried. Not resting instead of looking after things, resting in order to. That distinction matters, because a lot of tired people carry a low sense that rest is something taken rather than something needed. It isn't taken from anybody. Nobody is short of anything because you slept. The opposite, if anything. Everyone who depends on you would rather have the rested version tomorrow than the awake one tonight. Feel how that settles something. There's a specific sort of holding that comes from feeling like the only one keeping something up. It sits across the upper back, usually, and it doesn't let go easily, because underneath it is a quiet belief that if you stop, something won't be taken care of. Everything is taken care of, so let that place across the upper back understand it too. It's usually the last part of a person to accept that the day is over. Let the shoulder blades widen and go heavy into the mattress. Let whatever was being held up there simply be put down. Nothing depends on you keeping it lifted. It never did. That was just a habit of care, and care doesn't require lifting. The bread gets made, the roads stay open, the water keeps running. Somebody walks the baby, and the piece that's genuinely yours waits patiently on the table until morning, when a better rested person comes to collect it. You're not the only one awake in the world, and you're not needed among them tonight. Your name isn't on any of the lists being seen to in the dark right now. Somewhere the bread is rising. Somewhere a road is being driven through in the dark. Somewhere a baby is being walked slowly round a kitchen by somebody who will not remember this night in a year. And here, in this room, somebody is finally allowed to stop. The world is being looked after tonight. It isn't your turn. Come back to the room in Nicopolis with me. It's the end of a day there. The lesson is finishing. You can tell because the questions have stopped and people are shifting on the floor. Then it's over. There's always a small pause before anyone moves. That moment where a room knows it's finished but hasn't quite let go yet. Then somebody stands up, and that's that. They get up slowly, the way people do after sitting a long time. Somebody stretches, somebody gathers up a cloak that's been beneath him for 2 hours, and they start to leave, out through the doorway, in 2s and 3s, into a warm evening on the coast. There's talking at first, still about the lesson, and then about supper. You can hear them going down the hill. It's a long hill, and the sound takes a while to fade. Sandals on stone. Somebody calling something back. A door somewhere further down, opening and closing. All of it getting smaller. The voices get further apart. A laugh somewhere, quite far off now. Then just footsteps on stone, growing fainter. Then nothing. One of them is always last. There's a bit at the door, a question he didn't ask in front of the others, an answer, a good night. And then he goes too, footsteps across the threshold, a shape in the doorway for a second, dark inside the last of the light outside. Then the doorway is just a doorway. The room is empty. An old man, a mat, a low table, the light going gold and then grey outside. The sea somewhere below the town, doing what it does every evening whether anyone is listening or not. He doesn't light the lamp straight away. There's no reason to. The light outside is still enough to sit in, and sitting is the whole of the evening's plan. Nothing left to explain to anybody. Nobody waiting for an answer. Just a quiet room at the end of a day of talking. He'd have sat there a while before doing anything else. Most people do, after everyone leaves. There's a stretch where you simply stop, and the room settles around you, and nothing needs to happen next. Now let your own day empty out the same way, because everyone has gone home from yours too. Think of the people who were in your day, not to go over anything, just to see them leaving. The ones from the morning, whatever that was about, it finished hours ago, and they've gone. The ones from the middle of the day, gone, doing something else entirely now, in another room, not thinking about any of it. The ones from this evening, also gone, also finished. Even the one who took the most out of you today, they've gone too. They're somewhere else entirely now, thinking about something that has nothing to do with you. Everyone you spoke to today has put it down and moved on. Every conversation ended. Every question you were asked has been answered, or has quietly stopped mattering, which amounts to the same thing by this hour. They've all gone down the hill. Let them go one at a time, if it helps. Picture each stepping out of your day and off into their own evening. They're not carrying anything of yours. Whatever passed between you today, they set it down at about 6 o'clock and went to get something to eat. That's what everybody does. That's what you're doing now. Nobody is left in your day. It's an empty room now, with the light going out of it, and nothing in it that needs doing. And it's a good emptiness, nothing sad in it at all, just the particular quiet that arrives after people have gone, and being with them is over for the day. You don't have to be with anybody for the rest of the night. Feel what that does to the face. That's where being with people is kept. The small readiness around the eyes and the mouth, held all day without deciding to let it go. There's nobody here to arrange it for, nothing to explain, nothing to answer, no expression to hold, nobody arriving, nobody needing anything, no part of you on duty for anyone else, just a quiet room, the sound of your own breathing, the dark coming in through the window the way it does every night, filling the corners first, the last of the day going down the hill, getting smaller, until you can't hear it at all. Everyone has gone home. The room is yours now. Below the town there was always the sea. It was there through every lesson. Nobody mentioned it. It simply went on underneath everything. Before the town was built, all through the years he taught there, and tonight, while you're lying in the dark on the other side of a great deal of time, and in the evening when the voices were gone, it was the only thing left making any sound at all. He'd have heard it every night for 40 years, the last thing before sleep, over and over, until it stopped being something he noticed and became simply what the dark sounded like. Not waves, not the loud kind of sea, just water turning over slowly along the shore, gathering and letting go, gathering and letting go. If you listened from the town, you'd barely call it a sound, more like the shape of the quiet, something happening a long way below, at a pace that has nothing to do with anybody's evening. There's no hurry in it anywhere. It doesn't rush the next one. It doesn't hold one back. It has never once been early, and it has never once been behind. There's nothing it's trying to reach and nowhere it needs to be by morning. It simply does the same slow thing, over and over, all night, for nobody. It was doing it the night he arrived in that town. It was doing it every night of the 40 years he taught there. It was doing it long before anyone thought to build anything on that coast. And it's doing it right now, while you lie here in a country he never knew existed. Let that be the pace of the room you're in. Everything in here can go at the speed of water tonight. The breathing, the thinking, what's left of it, the whole slow settling of a body into a bed. Feel how your breathing wants to go the same way. If you leave it alone, in, then out, a little longer, then a small pause where nothing needs to happen, gathering and letting go. And notice the small pause at the bottom of each one, that little stillness after the out-breath, before anything begins again. The water has it too. There's always a moment where nothing is moving at all, just before it gathers. That pause gets a bit longer as the night goes on. Let it be as long as it likes. You don't have to make it match. It will drift towards that rhythm on its own, because it's the rhythm everything settles into when nothing is being asked of it. Water at night, breathing in a dark room. The same thing, more or less, both of them older than any of us, both of them entirely uninterested in how the day went. Notice how slow it's already become while we've been talking. You didn't do that. Nobody decided it. It happened the way water finds its level, quietly, on its own, the moment nothing was pulling at it. Longer between them now, softer at the edges, less and less happening in the chest, and every time the breath goes out, something in you goes down a little further into the bed, out and down, out and down, heavier each time, a little further into the mattress, a little more of your weight given over to it, like something small settling through very slow water, not dropping, just going down gently, at its own pace, turning a little as it goes, with nothing at all in the way. The sea does this all night, every night, whether anybody is at the window or not. Nobody keeps it going. Nobody has ever had to. Nothing counts them, either. No one has ever known how many times the water has turned over, and it makes no difference to the water at all. That's a good thing to sink towards, something that goes on and isn't measuring anything at all. That's the thing about the old, quiet parts of the world. They ask for nothing at all, and they never stop. So let it carry you the way it carries everything else, loosely, slowly, without any part of it depending on you being there for it. You can drift off in the middle of a breath, and the rhythm will go on exactly the same, which is the whole reason it's safe to let go, gathering and letting go, out and down, slower each time, softer each time, lower each time. The room is very quiet now. The bed is holding all of you. Nothing anywhere is in a hurry, just a slow rhythm somewhere underneath everything, carrying on the way it always has, taking you down with it, a little at a time, without either of you doing anything at all. Let the sea keep its own time. Let yourself keep it too. In a town like that, on a coast like that, the evenings have a particular quality. Anyone who has been somewhere warm in late summer knows it. The day ends, but the place stays warm long after, as though it were letting the afternoon go 1 hour at a time. The air goes cool quite quickly once the light drops. The stone doesn't. The stone doesn't. All day the walls and the steps and the ground have been taking in the sun, not doing anything, just sitting there, quietly filling up with warmth while everybody walked past. And then, in the evening, they start giving it back, giving it back. You can feel it if you put your hand flat on a wall after dark. It's warmer than the air around it, just holding something, gently, the way skin does, and it stays that way for hours, long after there's any sun left anywhere. People used to sit on those steps in the evening for exactly that reason, somewhere to sit and be warm at the end of a day. Nobody decided that. The stone isn't trying, it simply lets go of what it took in, slowly, all night, until it's given back everything it had, slowly. That's exactly what your body is doing right now, beneath those covers, without any instruction from you. You took in a whole day, all of it, the moving about, the talking, the going up and down stairs, all the small things it takes to be a person from morning until now. And beneath the covers, in the dark, you're letting it go, letting it go. Feel where the warmth has gathered, along your back, where you're pressing into the bed. That's the warmest part of you, and it's been building since you lay down. In your chest, moving slowly with the breath, low in the belly, which is usually the last place to let go, and the place where it settles most. Your palms, if they're resting anywhere soft, behind your knees, along the insides of your arms, the back of your neck, where the pillow is, everywhere the covers are touching you, and everywhere your own skin is touching itself. None of that was arranged. It simply gathered there while you were lying still. It's all going out of you slowly, into the bed, into the covers, into the room, the way it goes out of stone, slowly. And the covers give some of it straight back, which is why the space you're lying in has become its own small warm place, made entirely by you over the last while, without you noticing. You don't have to help. Notice that this is the opposite of most things. There's nothing to add here, nothing to build up or take on. Everything happening in you now is a giving back. You already did the taking in part. That was the day. Giving back. That's the whole point of a warm stone at night. It isn't doing anything. It's simply too full of the day to keep it. So it lets it go, at whatever pace the evening takes. Let each breath out take a little more of it with it. That's all a breath out is doing at this hour. Not clearing anything, not fixing anything, just carrying a small amount of the day out of you, over and over, until there isn't any left. Out and warmer, out and heavier, heavier. Let the next one be slower than the last. There's no reason to hurry any of this. The stone takes all night, and so can you, because that's the other thing warmth does. It makes everything heavier, heavier. Feel how much more weight there is in your arms than there was an hour ago, in your legs, in the whole length of your back along the mattress. Warm and heavy go together. They always have. You've felt it 100 times without naming it. In the sun, in warm water, in a car on a long drive as a child. Warmth arrives and the limbs stop wanting to move. That's the body giving the day back. It's been doing it since you lay down, giving the day back. And by the morning it will all be gone. The whole day, given up into the dark, the way the stone gives up the sun. You'll wake cool and light and ready to start taking in another one. That's the whole rhythm of a life, when you look at it from here. Fill up during the light, give it back in the dark, over and over, for years, without anybody having to arrange it. But not yet, not yet. For now there's a great deal still to give back, and hours in which to do it, and absolutely nothing you have to do to make it happen. Just lie in it, warm and heavier by the minute, letting the day out slowly into the dark. Let the day's warmth go out of you slowly. That's the only thing left to do, slowly. There's a small detail about him that people found worth writing down. In Rome, he didn't lock his door, not as a statement, not to prove anything to anybody. He had no interest in being admired for it. There simply wasn't much behind it. A bed, a mat, and whatever he was reading. Unlocking things takes a certain amount of attention that he'd decided not to spend. People noticed. That's why we know about it at all. It struck them as an odd way to live, and it must have come up in conversation more than once, because somebody thought it worth recording centuries later. But think about what a lock actually costs you. Not the lock itself, the part of you that remembers it, the bit at the back of the mind that keeps a small list of what's yours and where it is and whether it's still there. That list runs all day, quietly, in almost everybody. Where the keys are, whether the thing was left plugged in, which pocket has what in it, where the bag is, in a cafe, without looking at it. None of it is heavy on its own. All of it takes a small amount of you, continuously, from the moment you leave the house. He'd simply put the whole list down. Now, you're not living in a plain room in ancient Rome, and there's no reason you should. Your door is shut, and it should be. That's the sensible arrangement, and it was seen to hours ago by you, without any particular ceremony. Which is the point I want to leave you with. It's already done. That's the whole of this movement, really. Not a lesson about owning less, just a reminder that the closing up was finished a long time ago, and nobody quite told the part of you that's still half attending to it. Think back through the evening for a second. The door was closed. The windows were seen to. The keys are wherever the keys go. Everything that gets checked at the end of a day has been checked. Somebody, probably you, went round and finished the day off. Lights in rooms nobody's in, a tap turned properly, a door pulled to. It's all been done. You did it without thinking about it, the way it gets done every night. Nothing about the house needs you now, and yet notice what part of you has been half attending to it anyway. In a lot of people, a small piece of attention stays out in the hallway all night, listening to the building, following the ordinary sounds a house makes as it cools, not thinking about anything, just out there, on its own, still slightly up. You can call that one in now. It's been out there long enough, and there's nothing for it to do. The house is doing what houses do at night, settling, making the small noises it has made every night since you moved in. None of them have ever meant anything. They're just a building getting comfortable, a floorboard somewhere, something in the walls, a car going past 2 streets away, and then further, and then gone. All of it perfectly ordinary. All of it happening in a house that is simply cooling down at the end of a day. There's nothing to follow. There's nothing that needs naming. Let the listening come back inside. Back from the hall. Back through the door. Back into this room. And then smaller still. Back to the covers. And the pillow. And the small warm space you're lying in. Feel it arriving back. That small piece of you that was out in the hallway, coming back in and sitting down. The room gets slightly smaller and slightly warmer when it does. That's usually how you can tell. This is as far as anything has to reach tonight. The edge of the bed, the weight of the covers, the sound of your own breathing, which is now the only sound left that has anything to do with you. That's the whole territory now. Everything beyond it can look after itself until morning, exactly as it has been doing all evening while you weren't paying attention to it. He gave up the locking because it was one more thing to hold in mind, and he decided his mind had better uses. You don't have to give up anything. Yours is already turned, and the day is already closed, and the whole house has stopped needing your attention. Everything is shut for the night. You can stop listening now. Some people carry a quiet idea around with them, and I'd like to take it off you before the night goes any further. The idea that you're not very good at this, not good at sleeping, not good at switching off, somebody for whom nights are complicated, while other people seem to manage them easily. It usually isn't said out loud, not to anybody else, and not really to yourself either. It just sits there, underneath everything, and it turns an ordinary evening into something with a result attached to it, and it usually comes from somewhere reasonable. A run of thin nights, a period when everything was going on at once, a few mornings of feeling like a much older version of yourself. You noticed a pattern, the way anyone would, and gave it a name. That's all that happened. So let's look at it plainly. There is no skill here. There never has been. Sleeping isn't a thing anybody is good at. It's not like swimming, or being organized, or remembering names. There's no version of a person who has practiced it and can now do it better than you. Nobody has ever improved at falling asleep. And the people you're comparing yourself to aren't a different species. They've had their own thin stretches, which you didn't see, because nobody mentions those at lunch. Think about that for a second, because it's genuinely true. Everyone who sleeps easily is not doing anything. That's the entire difference. They're not doing something you never learned. They're doing less than you, which is not a talent. And the one thing that reliably keeps it away is caring how it goes, which is a strange arrangement when you think about it. The only thing in a human life where trying makes it further away. So there's nothing to get right in this bed tonight. Not one thing. There's no standard for the next few hours. Nothing to reach. No one will tell you in the morning whether you did it properly, because there isn't a properly. There's just a night going by with you in it. If you lie here and drift off in 10 minutes, that's a night. If you lie here warm and awake for a while, and then drift, that's also a night. The same kind, not a lesser one. If you're still here at 3, resting quietly in the dark, that is a perfectly good use of 3 o'clock. Warm and quiet is not a lesser way to spend an hour. People have done it in every century. It has never once meant anything at all. And if the whole night goes by warm and quiet and mostly awake, which happens to everybody, and will happen again, you'll still get up in the morning. The day will still be a day. That's the whole thing being taken off you. You are not being measured. You never were. There is no result being kept anywhere tonight. Nothing about these hours is written down, and nobody will ever ask you how they went. Feel what happens when that goes. Something in the chest usually eases, the part that's been quietly keeping track since you lay down. Notice it letting go, and notice the shoulders, which tend to go with it. Then the jaw, then the small muscles around the eyes, which have been very slightly attending this whole time, waiting to notice the moment sleep arrived, so they could mark it. Nothing to mark, nothing to notice. Let them be still. He'd have liked this one, I think. He spent his life telling people that almost nothing is up to them, and sleep is the perfect example of it. It isn't up to you. It never was, for anybody, in any century, which means it can't be done clumsily by you either. There's no handle on it to take hold of at all. All you were ever asked to do was lie down in a warm bed and stop reaching for it. You're doing that now. That's the whole of it. Lying down, being warm, not reaching. There is no advanced version, and nobody has ever done it better than you're doing it at this moment. There's nothing here to get right. Just lie here. Of everything on his list of things that aren't ours, this is the one that lives closest to home. The breath. You can take one on purpose if you decide to. Most people can hold one for a while, so it seems, at first glance, like something you're in charge of. But look at the numbers. You've taken millions, hundreds of millions, and you have chosen almost none of them. Every breath while you were reading, every breath during a conversation you were absorbed in, every breath in every film you've ever watched, and every meal and every journey, all of them arrived without being asked for. Not one of them was your idea. If it had been left to you, you'd have forgotten by lunchtime. Then there are the ones from last night, thousands of breaths, in the dark, while you were completely elsewhere. Nobody counting them, nobody keeping them going. You have no memory of a single one, and every one of them happened perfectly. The same is true of the night before, and the one before that, and every night going back as far as there is a you to go back to. That's the part worth sitting with tonight. The breathing does not stop when you drift off. Whatever happens to you when you fall asleep, wherever the thinking goes, whatever switches off, the breath carries on exactly as it was, steady, unhurried, not needing a single instruction. It has done that every night of your life, without one exception, through every kind of night you've ever had. So it's a kind of bridge, this, the one thing that stands on both sides. It's here now, while you're awake and listening. It'll be here in an hour, when there's no one home to notice it. Same rhythm, either side, which makes it the one thing you can lean on completely, right now, at this hour. Not because it's yours, because it isn't, so let it be entirely not yours for a while. That's the most restful thing it can possibly be. Don't deepen it, don't slow it down, don't count it, or shape it, or improve it in any way. Just let it happen near you, the way you'd let a river run. You wouldn't help a river. You'd sit beside it and let it get on with what it was already doing. Notice it going in. Notice it going out. Notice where you actually feel it. Perhaps the air at the edge of the nostrils, cooler going in than coming out. Perhaps the belly, rising slightly beneath the covers. Perhaps only a general sense of something moving in the middle of you. And notice the small pause underneath it all, where nothing at all is happening. Notice how much it has already slowed since we began, without any input from you at all. That was not your doing. That was the body handing itself over, one breath at a time, all evening. It will go on doing that whether you follow it or not, which means you can stop following it. It won't mind at all. It was never doing this for your benefit. Let your attention loosen off it. Let it drift wherever it wants, to a thought, to nothing at all, to a half picture that doesn't make any sense and isn't supposed to. The breath will carry on underneath all of it, in and out, without you. Nothing arranged, nothing overseen. Just air moving quietly through a warm body in a dark room, the way it has for as long as there's been a you. Slower now, softer now, further apart now. That pause at the bottom of each one is getting a little longer. You may have noticed. That's usually the last thing to change before the whole thing takes over. Nothing to do about it. Just let each pause be exactly as long as it wants to be. And when you finally go, it will still be here, doing what it has done every single night of your life, carrying you the whole way through, all night, until the light comes back and you turn up again. It goes on without you. Let it take you there. Earlier tonight we put the wanting down on purpose. Now something else starts happening, and this one you don't have to do at all. It arrives by itself at a certain hour, the way it does every night, because there's a level further down that wanting simply doesn't reach. Up near the top, it's everywhere. Preferences about everything, small leanings towards this and away from that, all day without pause. But it thins out as you go down, and somewhere below a certain point, there's nothing left of it at all. No opinion about how the night should go, no preference about anything whatsoever. Not because you've given up on things, nothing has been abandoned. It's more that there's nothing pulling in any direction down there. No lean forward, no lean away, just a person lying still in the dark, entirely level. You've been to that level every night of your life. It's where sleep lives. You won't remember being there, which is part of how you know it worked. Nobody comes back from it with anything to report. only the sense in the morning of having been somewhere restful, and you're close to it now. You can usually tell if you know what to notice. The mind stops proposing things. It was making suggestions all evening. Check this, think about that, remember the other. Now they come further apart, and there's less behind them, and half of them stop halfway through. You stop minding how any of it goes. Whether sleep comes in 10 minutes or an hour has quietly stopped being interesting. It was a large question earlier this evening. Now it's just a thing somebody might wonder about. Little things stop seeming worth adjusting. The arm that could be moved slightly, the cover that could be pulled up an inch. You notice them, and then you don't bother. That's the wanting thinning out. A very good sign, and it happens on its own. So let each breath out take you a little further past it. Down through the last of the small preferences. Down past caring how this goes. Down past the part that was keeping an interest in the outcome. Each breath out lowers you a little more. Not far, just enough that the one before it seems slightly above you now, down to where nothing at all is being reached for. There's no want down here, nothing to be settled first, nothing that has to happen before you're allowed to rest. Just warmth, weight, dark, warmth, a body that stopped needing anything a while ago, and a mind that has run out of things to bring up. And the further down you go, the less any of it reaches you, in the softest possible way. Not one thing from today has any weight at this level. Not the conversation, not the message, not the thing you have to do on Thursday. They're all up there somewhere, in the light, being perfectly fine without you. Not because things stopped mattering, because you've gone below the level where anything is measured. Let yourself keep going. There's nowhere in particular to arrive, and nothing waiting at the end of it. Slower, heavier, past the last of it. There's nothing down here that needs anything from you, and nothing you need from it. That's the whole arrangement, and it's the most restful one there is. Restful, nobody wanting, nobody waiting, just warm dark, going down further than you can follow. Below all the wanting, there's only warmth and dark. Let yourself go down into it. Here's something worth knowing about where you're going, and then we'll stop explaining things for the night. You can't take anything with you, not one thing. Nobody ever has. Whatever you're still holding stays here, in this room, on this side of it. The thoughts, the plans, the list, the day. None of it comes. The conversation doesn't come. The number doesn't come. The thing you keep meaning to sort out doesn't come. They all stay in the room, and they're perfectly comfortable there. They don't mind waiting. They've waited every night so far, and never once complained about it. You've never once carried something across. Not in all the thousands of nights you've done this. He'd have found that fitting, I think. A man who spent his life saying that almost nothing belongs to us, and then every night, without anybody having to arrange it, everybody gives it all back for a few hours. And notice that isn't something anybody decided. It's simply how it works. Sleep only takes the person. Everything else stays on this side. Which is why people wake up in the morning feeling lighter than they went to bed, even when nothing has changed. So there's nothing to pack tonight, nothing to keep hold of just in case, nothing to bring along in a pocket for later. You can't get ready for sleep by holding something. It has never once worked that way for anybody. You go the way everyone goes, with empty hands, out of a warm bed, into the dark. Every person who has ever slept has gone exactly like that. Kings and shepherds, everybody in this street. Him, in his small house on the coast, 40 years running, and it's all still here in the morning. That's the other half of it, and it's the part that makes the first half safe. Nothing disappears while you sleep. It's all exactly where you set it down. Nothing gets left behind for good. The day is on the table where you put it, and you'll pick up whatever you want of it when the light comes. So the hands can be completely empty now. There's nothing left that needs holding for any reason at all. Feel them where they're lying. Nothing in them. Nothing they're holding on to. Let the fingers uncurl if they haven't. Let the palms rest open, or however they've fallen. There's nothing they need to keep. And the mind, the same. It doesn't need to hold anything for the last little way, whatever it's still carrying. It can set down here. Not forever, just for the short distance between here and sleep, which is the only distance left tonight. Notice how light that is. There's a particular ease that comes from having nothing to bring. Anyone who has walked out of a house with empty hands on a summer evening knows it. That's the state you're in now, carrying nothing, needing nothing, with the whole night ahead. Nothing to bring, nothing to arrange first, nothing that has to be settled before you're allowed to go. Just a warm body, a dark room, a person about to go somewhere they've been 10,000 times before and always come back from. Nothing to bring, nothing to leave word about, nothing that has to be seen to first. You take nothing with you. That's how it's always been. Something changes in a body that has been warm and still for long enough. First it gets heavy. You'll have felt that already tonight. The arms going down, the legs giving up, the whole weight of you settling into the bed. That's the first part, and it's already done. Feel where the warmth has got to by now. It isn't in patches anymore. It's the whole of you, down the arms, along the back, all the way to the feet, with the covers holding it in place. Then, if you stay still a little longer, something else happens. The heaviness stops registering. It doesn't go away. You just stop noticing it, the way you stop noticing a sound that never changes, or the weight of your own clothes. And what's left is unusual and very pleasant. You stop being able to find your edges. Try it, gently, without moving anything. Can you tell exactly where your hands are? Not roughly, exactly. The precise line where your fingers stop and the sheet begins. Most people can't at this point in the night. It's all one warm area now, with no clear border anywhere in it. The hand, the sheet, the arm, the air, all the same temperature, all one thing. Same with the feet. They're a long way off now, and they've stopped reporting anything. Same with the back, along the mattress. Somewhere in there is the line where you stop, and the bed begins, and it's become almost impossible to place. The outline has gone soft. It's like the difference between a wall and mist. Earlier tonight you could have drawn round yourself. Now there's just a warm area in a dark room, without much of a boundary anywhere. That's not you drifting off yet. That's the step just before it, the one everybody passes through and nobody remembers. It happens because there's nothing left to feel, nothing pressing anywhere, nothing that wants adjusting. When a body has been still long enough, it stops sending messages up, and the shape of it quietly blurs into the warmth around it, and nothing is going anywhere. The bed is still holding all of you, exactly as it was, whether you can feel the edges or not. So let it blur. You don't need the edges tonight. Nothing between now and morning is going to require you to know exactly where your arm is. That was daytime information, and the day finished a long time ago. Let the hands go first, then the feet, which are usually the furthest away by this point in the night, then the face, which stops feeling like a face at all and becomes simply a warm area somewhere near the pillow, the mouth, slightly open perhaps, the jaw, gone, the place between the eyebrows, gone, warm and heavy, and then not heavy, just present, somewhere in the dark, without a definite shape, not floating exactly, held completely, but no longer able to find where the holding stops. That's how everybody arrives at sleep. Every night, all over the world, in every kind of bed. It's the last thing before, and you're in it now. Warm and weightless, and hardly here at all. Let the rest of it go. It's already started. That's the thing about this part of a night. There's no moment where it begins, and nobody has ever caught themselves at it. By the time anyone thinks about starting, they're already some way down. You're not at the top of this. You've been on it for a while. It's been going since the room went quiet, since the body got heavy, since the last few things you were holding got handed over and nothing came to replace them. Have a look back at it, if you can be bothered, which you probably can't, and that's rather the point. When did the room stop mattering? It was there earlier. The walls, the ceiling, the shape of the furniture in the dark. Somewhere in the last while it stopped being anything you were keeping track of, and became just the place your body happens to be. When did you last follow a whole sentence from beginning to end? You won't know. Nobody ever does. Things simply stopped arriving in one piece somewhere along the way, and you didn't notice, because the part that does the noticing had gone quiet as well. When did the covers stop being something separate from you? When did the last thought finish? Not trail off, actually finish, with an ending on it. That's how far along you already are. There's no door here. Nothing closes behind you. It's a slope, a very long, very gentle one, going down at a gradient you can barely feel, and you've been on it since somewhere around the middle of all this, which means there's nothing left to begin. Whatever the first part of this was, it's already behind you. No moment to get ready for, no decision to make, no point at which you have to let go, because the letting go has been happening on its own for some time. You're just going down, quietly, at your own pace, the way everything settles when nothing is holding it up. Slower now than a minute ago, softer, further along than when I said it last, and it'll be further still by the end of this sentence, without you doing anything about it. And it keeps going without any help. That's the whole nature of a slope. You don't have to do anything on it. You only have to stop holding on to the side, and you stopped that a while ago. There's nothing to hold on to anyway. Your hands are empty. Your edges have gone soft. There's warmth all round you, and nothing whatsoever being asked of you by anybody. Every single thing has already been put down. So just keep going the way you're already going. No steering, no pace to keep, nothing to check on the way down. Down past the room, down past the day, down past the last few things that were still arriving, which are further apart now, and quieter, and mostly not finishing. And you don't have to be present for the end of it. Nobody is. That's simply how the thing is built, for everybody. It'll finish by itself. It always does. Somewhere in the next stretch, you'll simply not be here for it anymore. There won't be a moment. There never is. You'll just be on the other side of it, in the morning, wondering vaguely how much of this you heard. You're already going. Just keep going. We started tonight with a boy whose name wasn't his own, a word that meant acquired, written down beside him in somebody's household, because nobody thought to ask what his mother had called him. He had nothing. That was the whole of his situation, and nobody would have chosen it. He limped. He owned a lamp, eventually. He was put out of Italy once by an emperor who found philosophers inconvenient. So he opened a school on a Greek coast instead, and stayed there for the rest of his life. Out of that, he worked out the thing we've been circling all night. Almost none of it is ours. Not the body, not the day, not what people think, or how things turn out, or whether the ones we love are all right at this moment. For most of a life, that sounds like the least welcome news anybody could bring you. And then, at some point, usually late, usually in the dark, it turns over and becomes the best. Nothing about the facts changes. You simply move round to the other side of them, because if almost nothing is yours, then almost nothing is yours to carry. You've been putting things down all evening. Notice how much lighter it is in here now. The second pile, everything you couldn't move from a bed at this hour. Down, the demand that today had gone differently. Down, the people you can't help from here, held now without the sleepless part. Down, whatever you were carrying that was never yours to begin with, all of it. Down, and whatever is actually you, the part that has been here through all of it, that nobody in all those years could reach, that's still exactly where it was. Nothing tonight touched it, nothing today did either. What's left is very small, and completely enough. A warm bed, a dark room, a body letting go by itself. A few hours in which absolutely nothing is required of you. He'd have thought that was an enormous amount. Think about it. A man who slept on a mat, in a house with an open door, with one lamp he'd chosen because it couldn't be worth taking. If he'd been shown this room, and this bed, and told the whole night was yours with nothing asked in return, he'd have called you fortunate beyond reason. And you get it tonight, and tomorrow night, and the one after that. He'd be pleased, I think, that his lessons ended up here. 2,000 years of being copied and translated and printed, all so somebody tired could be told, in a dark room, that they're allowed to put things down. That's roughly what he was doing in Nicopolis anyway, telling people the same few things, patiently, until they went home lighter. So take it. Nobody is going to hand it to you more clearly than this. Not by doing anything. There's nothing left to do, and there hasn't been for a while, just by lying here, in the warm, with your hands empty and your edges gone soft, going slowly down, the way you've been going for some time now, without any part of it needing your attention. Nothing to keep hold of, nothing to bring, nothing left over from today that has to come with you. And if something turns up at the last moment, one more thought, one more thing you meant to settle, just let it stand there. It'll keep until morning, and you'll be a much better person to meet it. Nothing needs deciding between here and the light. You're already most of the way there. It was never yours to hold. Let it all go now, and sleep. And so we come to the quiet end of the night. Whatever you heard tonight, carry it lightly. Hold it with both hands open. You don't have to keep it, or use it, or even remember it. It will be here again, waiting gently, on another evening. And so will I. May the weight of the day be set down now, and stay down until morning. May the things you cannot change grow softer in the dark. May your kind, tired mind, the one that has carried so much and tried so hard, find that it is finally allowed to rest. There is nothing left to do tonight, nothing to solve, nothing to carry. You have done enough. You are enough. You can let it all go now. Just breathe, and soften, and sleep as deeply and as long as you need to. Sleep well, friend, and thank you truly for spending this night here at Restful Minds.